Hornby Magazine's Great Electric Train Show returns for 2024. Our first layout is Flint Hills, which is an N-gauge layout. It must have snuck in because it's not in the brochure and I can't find any information on it. However, by observing it, I'm guessing that it is the following. It's an N-gauge layout, it's completely automated with computer control, with working signals and track occupation detection system. It's all very clever. Just have a watch. The track plan must be a CJ Freezer inspiration because it's an out and back terminus style layout. The trains leave the terminus, as can be demonstrated by this prototype HST here, and then go underneath the layout through a tunnel, and it passes through various fiddle yards and return loops before coming back to the terminus station. I think I'm telling a lie about this layout actually. I can give you some information on it, and it's only because I've overheard someone talking in the background about it. You can find it on YouTube. So this is definitely one to look for. Not now though, keep watching mine, because, you know, you'll upset the algorithm and other people won't come and watch. Ah, here it is. This is the train detection system in action. All very clever. Working track circuits and signals. Most impressive stuff. Well, that's it for winging it for now. I can go back to the guidebook and tell you about some other layouts at the show. And we come to Millsbridge in N-gauge. This is a London Midland region layout based in the 1960s, brought to you by the Huddersfield Railway Modellers. Millsbridge models the Millsbridge area of Huddersfield in 2mm scale, which is located 2 miles west of the town centre in the Colne Valley. This route was used by trains from Leeds to Manchester via Huddersfield, and in the steam era featured a 4-track main line. They chose to model this area in the early 1960s steam diesel transition period, when the line was still 4 tracks and also had a goods yard in operation in the Millsbridge area. A number of modifications to the original Ordnance Survey plan had to be made. These included shortening the viaduct by a few arches and the compacting of the Longwood goods yard. Scar Lane Overbridge gave a natural break to the left, and to the right, Goldcar Station was used with its overbridge. This combination of scenes are based on real locations, but with selective compression required to create a working model railway. The layout features scratch-built buildings and structures. As the fuel train passes by, a WD Austerity can be seen working the van train past the signal box. I really like the atmosphere created by the back scene on this layout. That smoggy grey-brown tone that's used around the layout really does give an industrial feel around the Yorkshire area. There's some great structures to look out for as well, such as these coal drops and the viaduct. As the Austerity runs towards the station, a Camel Metro DMU passes by in the opposite direction. I really enjoyed the detail on this layout, the buildings and all the scenery. It really has all come together, and as I say, that tone has really brought the atmosphere to it. An absolute pleasure to watch. One of my favourites of the show, I'd say. This is, and I'm hoping I got it right, is Kreuzweg in HOM. It's a 2010 Swiss layout, and it's brought to you by Oliver Brown and Friends. This is a first attempt at a Swiss layout by the owner, and his two module boards brought together with a nice snowy scene and a rather lovely diorama. The diorama was deliberately conceived as a practice model, for the owner wishes to model Landwasser Viaduct in the future. Welcome to St Pankraz in Stermark. This hotel gauge layout is an Austrian 1980s to present day, operating by Mike Upton and friends. St Pankraz in Stermark is the terminus of a branch line in the Stermark region of Austria. Trains on the line are operated by the Austrian Federal Railways, OBB, or the private Steermark Landbahn, STLB. Apologies if I've butchered that. Traffic consists mainly of wood trains serving the local timber industry, with additional freight consisting of tankers supplying heating oil to the local population and vans to the goods shed. Passenger trains are in the hands of DMUs, rail cars or hold stock, as seen here. The branch is also popular with rail tour operators, which frequently visit, bringing an interesting variety of steam locomotives to the line. The HO gauge layout is set in a broad time period from the mid-1980s to the present day. The last of the summer is gone, and autumn is giving us its colourful display. Soon the area will see the first frosts of winter, but for now, under a cloudless sky, the station basks in the warmth of the late October sun. I'm having a feeling these layouts were laid out in geographical order, because we are now at Breggbenbach, which is an N-Gauge 2000s German layout, operated by Les Richardson and friends. Breggbenbach in Schwarzwald is a small wayside halt on a private secondary line through the Black Forest. The halt exists to serve a small brewery and is almost at the summit of the line. The fictional history is that the line was extended over the hill from Furtwangen and down the Grotterol to Feinberg in Bessuga. Managing to remain open after the Second World War, it was used as a guinea pig for electrification, getting the job done on the cheap. Stock was generally DB cast-offs. The opening up of the European freight market sees the line earning money by setting lower excess charges for through freight between Feinberg and Switzerland, and acting as a bypass for the congested area around Basel. Set in the present day, trains are short due to the 1 in 25 ruling gradient, which is less steep than the real-life Holland-Tallenbahn 2 valleys further south, which is a 1 in 17. I continue my butchering of languages by going to Wales. This is Gogledd Gwych in 009. It's a preservation line of the North Wales area, and the operating team is Steve and Jason Fox. The Great North, as it is known in anglicized language, layout was designed and built by Jason Fox, who is aged 15. The layout is partially modelled on the Festiniog Railway and measures 4 foot by 2 foot. It is modelled with 009 gauge track and rolling stock to 1/76 scale. The layout development started in January 2024 and finished in August 2024. Little sister to Gowerton Parkway is Talbot Lane TMD, which is an OO gauge layout set in the 2000s, the north east of England. The operating team is Daniel Stanbridge and Marcus Lambert. Talbot Lane TMD is a small modern image servicing facility based somewhere in the north east of England. It was originally built by Marcus Lambert and is making a return visit to the Great Electric Train Show 5 years on from its first appearance. You can expect to see a variety of modern traction diesel and electric locomotives on the layout, which has been designed to show you what you can achieve in a small space. The depot's fuel reserves have been topped up, and Class 56101 in Transrail livery departs with a pair of TTA tankers. Now we come to Steeple Bumpleigh, an EM gauge layout set in the 1960s on the Western region. It's operated by Norman Raven and family. Steeple Bumpleigh is a small SA in EM gauge where the track spacing is 18.2mm as opposed to the 16.5 of OO gauge. The layout size is 8 foot by 18 inches and it represents a fictional small station and goods yard on the truncated branch line somewhere on the western region of British Railways in the 1960s. A cement works provides an additional source of traffic. Track is from the EM Gauge Society, while locomotives and rolling stock are a mixture of Bachmann, Depot, Hellion and Hornby products, all re-wheeled to EM Gauge from their original OO settings. KD couplings are used on all rolling stock, giving, on a good day, automatic coupling and uncoupling. Control of Steeple Bumpleigh is through digital control using an ESU ECOS unit with remote operating from a Loticon wireless controller which connects through an EMAX router. Operation is simple. Passenger services are provided by a Class 105 DMU, while goods traffic is locomotive hold. Trains enter the layout, shuffle their wagons into the sidings and then return to the storage yard, which used Intensio cassettes to manage trains off sea. Now we move to Cumbria. This is Alston, an N-gauge layout set between 1956 to 1960, and it's operated by Peter Brown and Friends. The design brief for this N-gauge model railway layout was that it should be on one board that could fit in the back of a car and be interesting to run. Looking at this layout, I'd say so. The builders, looking for inspiration, a friend suggested a north-eastern terminus station such as Alston in Cumbria. Alston has a wonderful station building, and when the owner realised what an interesting and challenging model it would make, they looked no further. From the outset, it was clear that compromises would be needed. An exact model of the station and sidings would need a bigger baseboard than was being planned, even in N-gauge, and would involve a few buildings and much more open space. Artistic license was used, the track plan was simplified, and the position of the coal drops and goods shed was changed. The former turntable was reinstated, but the biggest change of all was to relocate Alston High Street to be next to the station rather than some distance away. Every building is scratch built and is based on an actual Alston building, with a view to creating a sense of place and atmosphere of the town. It's the highest market town in England, by the way. The fine scale track is all handmade with code 40 rail, but is N-gauge rather than 2mm scale. The period modelled is the late BR steam era, from 1956 until the last locomotives were stood down in the 1960s. Alston featured in Hornby magazine in June 2024, and the station building model won the Chairman's Award in 2021 for the 2mm Society online modelling competition. You know, they're breaking the rules there. He said he hadn't built a 2mm scale, said it was N-gauge. It's not really controversial, just saying. Nevertheless, a well-deserved award, I think we can all agree there.
It was quite unusual that at places like Rothbury and Alston, you used the turntable to...
Now we're at Newvaddon Parkway, which is an N-gauge layout set between 1995 to 2023 on the Western region, and is operated by the Red Roof MRC. Now, Newvaddon Parkway translates from Cornish to English as Nowdrift. This N-gauge layout is set in the diesel era. from 95 to the present day to showcase the rolling stock changes through privatisation. It's 16 feet long. It features a double-track main line with a large station based on that of Newport in South Wales, features from Totnes on the Great Western Main Line, as well as local branch lines in Cornwall also bring features to this layout, while visitors will also see the busy depot, DMU servicing facility, and more. Ellie Town is an 00 gauge layout, set in the 2000s in the Midlands region. The operating team is Aaron Smith and Friends. Ellie Town is a small modern image layout based in Cheshire. Passenger services are operated by Arriva Wales, East Midlands and cross country. On the freight side there is a ballast siding and a warehouse that imports steel, which are served by a variety of locomotives from different companies. There is a 2-road locomotive depot with a separate fuelling point, which means there is always something happening on Ellie Town. At present, the Class 70 is shunting from one of the sidings to the Stabling Road, where it will be refuelled for its next journey. Looking over the town, we see a Network Rail MPV approaching and then arriving in the engineer side. Now we come to Whaplode, and no, that's not some newfangled phrase from the kids are saying, it's the name of a station, in O gauge. This 1940s Eastern Region layout is brought to you by Thomas Hoy and the Gauge Guild. Whaplode sets out to prove that you don't need a lot of space to create a decent layout that works in O gauge. Talking of works, look at that crane, it actually works. This layout is 7 feet long and 18 inches deep. All the track is from Pico, apart from the freeway point, which was picked up on a bring and buy stand and was scratch built. It is not an accurate model of Whaplode station, but is very loosely based on it in the 1940s. The layout is DCC operated, and most of the locomotives have sound decoders fitted. The layout is operated by a Raspberry Pi to control the points via a Lens DCC system. We can also drive the locomotives with their phones. The motive power is kit built and painted by the owner, along with the rolling stock. All the buildings are either scratch built or from kits. It also has a working yard crane which adds additional visual interest. It's always interesting to see such a small O gauge layout to prove that you can have O gauge and you don't need to worry about space. As the owners say, this layout is 7 foot, as can be seen here, from this small area around the station stretching across to the fiddle yard, so the whole thing is 7 foot inclusive. There's some lovely little cameos in this area too, but my particular favourite is the poor old chap who's painting that barn. He must be bored out of his mind. I know, I've been there. Before we leave Whaplode, let's get one more view of that working crane as it puts this crate onto the back of the steam lorry.
It's been bothering me, Will.
What's that?
The one lamp that's not the same as the others.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that straight away when you put it out. Have you got a bowl?
No, it's one.
This is Locomotive Graveyard, an 00 gauge layout set in the 2000s in the Midland region. Its operating team is Steve Rogers, which I don't think is Captain America, but I didn't ask, and Friends. Locomotive Graveyard is a scrapyard used to break up modern image locomotives and obsolete coaching stock and wagons that have come to the end of their working lives. All is not totally lost, as some of the locomotives do go on to be preserved. Now here's a layout with a name that's great to say out loud, Wandleford. Go on, have a go yourself. It's an 00 gauge layout set on the southern region in the 1980s and it's brought to you by Andrew Knights and friends. Andrew suggests that you sit down on the park bench, open the bag of cheese sandwiches and your bottle of Tizer, and it's time to watch the trains run by the tracks before you. Much of the traffic is suburban units scuttling from terminus to destinations on the main line. Some will divert onto the branch line at Wandleford Junction. The station does not bear this title. Not all trains are local blue units. Some faster EMU services will be seen as well as the occasional locomotive hold train and several freights common to this part of the world. Apart from life on the main tracks, there's some activity at the factory adjacent to the station, while the larger houses to the south of the station seem to have an open garden. According to the NGS, train rides may be on offer to some, as well as the usual teas, coffees, cakes and plants. Staying in the southern region, but going a little further back in time, by a good 30 years, it's Manston Airport in 00 gauge, the 1950s southern region. The operating team is southern region. I think that might be a typo. Sir Herbert Walker was a forward-looking general manager of the Southern Railway who pressed ahead with an education and the development of Southampton docks, both of which brought substantial traffic to the Southern. The owner's little bit of make-believe is that he also decided to back air transport and develop the existing aerodrome at Manston in East Kent for long-distance passenger, mail and freight. There had been a branch to the aerodrome when it was built. This was taken out in the 1920s. The new line would have followed the same route, coming from the coastal line just to the west of Birchington. The proposition has allowed the owner to build a small station, as the aircraft of the time carried passengers counted in dozens rather than hundreds, but with some of rather pretentious Art Deco buildings to set the scene for prestigious traffic. It's just the excuse for the owner to run the small XSE-CR locomotives that they like and shorten trains. The layout is set in the early 1950s when the US Air Force were based at Manston and is built to 00 gauge. The buildings are all scratch-built from plastic sheet and strip. Now we come to Lockdown Sidings, also in the 1950s and 00 gauge, but the region is industrial, so it could be anywhere. The operating team is Simon Marsh and friends. Lockdown Sidings started with a spare baseboard, 2 pico points, a desire to see whether after a very long break and several false starts the owner could still build a model railway, and spare time during the first lockdown. After a lot of trial and error and placing of old kits around the baseboard, the owners settled on a plan a bit different from most micro layouts. They gave it a rural treatment, supposedly a corner of a former military depot set in the 1950s and now in use for a small amount of general goods traffic. The location is a bit vague, but probably somewhere in East Kent where they were living at the time. Contours were built up with scenic shaper and the concrete roadway is cork sheet covered with textured paint and heavily weathered. Greenery is mostly static grass. The buildings and other accessories come from a range of manufacturers. The owner has tried to keep the picture simple and balanced and not overcrowded. The scene is conceived as a whole. Operation is simple too. A small engine brings a couple of wagons onto the scene, shuffles around a bit and takes a couple back. Now we come to Redbridge Wharf in 00 gauge, 1965 to 1967 Southern Region, since the end of steam days. The operating team is the Winchester Railway Modellers. Redbridge Wharf depicts a layout based on the area of Redbridge, Hampshire. It is situated on the north-westerly shore of Southampton Water at the mouth of the River Test and built to 00 gauge with fine-scale track and third rail. The station was opened in 1847 by the Southampton and Dorchester Railway and became a junction in 1865 when the Spratt and Winkle line opened to Romsey and Andover. The large area of drained marshland between the wharf and the station was used as a material holding area. This then became the sleeper works, including the manufacture of sleepers, bridge timbers and cast track components. In the final years of operation, the site was used for the assembly of long welded rail sections and the laying out of large pointwork complexes. The casual observer of the layout has a view across Southampton Water, as though they are looking from Ealing. Southampton Central Station is 4 miles to the east, and Totton is about 3/4 mile to the west. The focus of the layout is the wharf, with the works behind and the Redbridge Station and Junction to the rear. On the layout are numerous piles of timber sleepers and a barge. The river itself with salt marshes, mud flats, water and the causeway. The timber pond, the foundry and the associated buildings connected with track building. The new rail causeway, the lack of the last road bridge and the laying of the third rail sets 1965 as the earliest possible operating date of the southern region layout, offering operating flexibility from late steam through to modern image. Here we catch the tail end of a banana van train passing the rather dismantled railway engine shed. Not quite sure how it's ended up in that state. Looks like someone drove a bit too fast. And our final glimpse of Redbridge Wharf is a Hymec Class 35 arriving with the brand new BR corporate livery of blue and grey on the Mark 1 coaches. Dewstone is an NG7 layout, brand new gauge by Bachmann, that's been presented by modeller Dan Everson. It was built for the Hornby magazine and is a lovely diorama of a slate quarry. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, he's got access anyway into everything, and also the private.
This lovely small diorama of Sheringham Station in Norfolk, which is right next to the Norfolk Railway, is demonstrated by Richard Hall. It's a lovely little model. Now we come to Fairwood Junction, OO gauge, set in the 2000s in the Western region. The operating team is Steve Jones and Friends. Fairwood Junction is Steve Jones' latest OO gauge layout and models the busy junction just outside Westbury in 15 foot by 10 foot. The new layout models the last 10 years on the Western region with a collection of heavy freights intersected by GWR and first group liveried HSTs, Class 800 units, Class 158 and 159 DMUs and more. The layout has all the features of the real location, including the stone bridge across the junction. Regular visits to Fairwood Junction have allowed the location to be modelled realistically in a compact space. All trains are DCC controlled, with the majority sound fitted. The locomotives, drawn from the Curascale, Bachmann, Hellion, Hornby, Cavalax and others, are all sound fitted. Here we see an unusual working for the area. A Class 70 passes through with a Freightliner train. It also looks like it hasn't received its air intake modification, so it could catch fire at any moment. The back scene is most enjoyable, being that of the Westbury area, including the famous White Horse on the Hill. We're now at Gresty Bridge in 00 gauge, in the northwest region in the period of 2010 to 2024. The operating team is Mark Davies and friends. Gresty Bridge is built to capture the look and atmosphere of the modern day direct rail services depot located at Gresty Bridge in Crewe. The layout features the readily identifiable buildings and locomotives that are features of the real location. Classes 37, 57, 66 and 68 are all regular visitors to the depot for fueling, stabling and servicing. While passing behind the depot buildings, the Transport for Wales passenger services can regularly be seen along with a variety of engineering stock carrying out maintenance. A small maintenance yard is located at the headsham end of the depot. All of the locomotive fleet in the layout are sound fitted and run at prototypical speeds. A fully functioning tamper can also be seen regularly carrying out its duties along the main lines at the rear. The layout is fully DCC and is controlled by an ESU ECOS unit. This also controls all of the routes, interlocked signals, doors and gates that are featured around the layout. The blue flashing lights, and also later in the video, located around the depot are a safety feature of the real depot. Actually, I tell a lie, I don't think they use that footage in the end. The purpose of them is to notify any staff in the area that locomotive moves are about to take place, and this is replicated in miniature. Located around the layout are lots of little cameo scenes which capture the modern day railway network. These include engineers working on the track and signalling systems, while devegetation works are also carried out. In fact, if you looked here, you might just spot the chap working with a chainsaw. The track work is all detailed Pico ballhead, apart from the main lines which feature flat bottom rail. Even the pandrol clips are detailed on the main line. The layout was originally constructed by Chris Forden, who did the track work, buildings and basic scenery. Its current owner is Mark Davies, and since taking over, he's carried out the fine detailing, scenic works and installation of the digital control. As a Transport for Wales service moves away in the background, we see a pair of 66s shunting some snow ploughs around the depot.
I think it's going inside the depot.
And if you look closely, it turns out I did capture those flashing blue lights. There they are. Now we come to Titheridge Junction in Engage. It's a Western region layout set between 1975 to 1982 and is presented by the Bradford Model Railway Club. After completing a new 14-road storage yard for an existing Engage layout, Dewsbury Midland, there was talk of using it for a new modern image club layout. Coincidentally, well-known Engage modeller Pauline McKenna had recently joined the club, and this provided the motivation to make a start. To add some interest, a flying junction with a simple siding was conceived. The name is in memory of Pauline's late husband, DB Shanker driver Steve Titheridge. Now it's Scotland, Dalzeil North, 00 gauge 2000s, and it's presented by Roddy Newbrigging and friends. The layout represents electrified secondary routes somewhere in central Lanarkshire, Scotland. Historically, central Lanarkshire was once famed for its steelworks, heavy engineering factories and blessed with a network of busy railway lines serving these facilities. Dalzeil North is a fictitious location, but with a hint of reality, as the buildings are all based on structures still existing or recently demolished, which were formerly related to Central Lancashire's once thriving steel industry, as well as the recent addition of the imposing Sidings cement works, part of Lancashire skyline for many years. The layout represents rail traffic typical of central Lanarkshire during the early 2000s, including coal, steel, cement and containers. The line is a busy through route, and as it allows access between east and west, it carries a wide selection of passenger and freight services. Regeneration has seen the former steel industry sidings redeveloped as a dedicated terminal for EWS container traffic. It is built to 00 gauge and featured in Hornby magazine 201 March 2024. Here we can see a Class 37 with an inspection vehicle passing through the area. Well, it wouldn't be the Great Electric Train Show without Making Tracks, so here's the latest one, Making Tracks 4. Making Tracks 4 is the 00 gauge layout set between 2010 to 2024 of the West Coast Main Line. The operating team is the Rail Nuts. For the fourth year, Pete Waterman and the Rail Nuts are returning to the Great Electric Train Show with their latest layout and with brand new features, which will debut this very weekend. Making Tracks 4 up to the junction model with 4 locations on the West Coast Main Line in the present. It features Bushy Viaduct, Watford Junction Station, Watford Tunnel and Road Cutting. For the Great Electric Train Show, the 64-foot by 12-foot 00 gauge layout is being expanded with new scenic elements in front and behind the scale-length model of the mainline station. New for the show are full-scale unique models of Watford Junction Station building, the Watford DC Line terminus platforms and the currently under construction flats, which are positioned to the east of the mainline platforms. This will take Watford Junction Station's width from the 2-foot scene at Chester Cathedral to more than 6 feet. Rolling stock will model the contemporary railway scene on the West Coast Main Line, with passenger formations supplied by the rail nuts and including Class 221, 350, 390, 730 and 800 units, as well as the impressive 16-coach Caledonian sleeper train in the hands of a Class 92. Freight trains are being supplied by Hornby magazine and will reflect current formations including container, fuel, aggregate, cement and engineering formations. Look out for specially modelled network rail trains by Anthony Wiltshire from the Rail Nuts as well. Construction of the new features captures the full impact of Watford Junction Station and continues the route's plans to model the real railway and its surroundings. The trees are proper full scale as well, and you get lovely views like this. The Pendolino just arriving on the platform, whilst the Midland Pullman HST sits on the other side. Further along the line we're at Road Cutting with a pair of Class 90s pulling a Freightliner train. And round the back of the layout, we get a glimpse of A44489 pulling the brand new Hornby Coronation coaches. And they do make me smile.
Who's controlling it?
Next we have Cromwell Road, O-gauge Western Region layout, set in the 1960s, presented by the Marlow and Maidenhead Royal Railway Club. This 40-foot long layout makes full use of the club members' extensive collection of locomotives and rolling stock and allows passenger and freight movements as well as plenty of shelter. It is built in a series of plywood frame baseboards, giving a total scenic area of 24 foot, plus an additional space for off-scene train storage. The track has been built by club members using C&L fine-scale components. Now we're at Ebsworth Street, OO gauge 2000s, set in the Midlands region, presented by Greg Marshall and friends. Ebsworth Street is an ambitious modern image OO gauge layout for the exhibition circuit, featuring a range of railway operating across a 30-foot long seam. The track layout is designed for the signalling and operations side. Ebsworth Street recreates a small mainline terminus station with 3 platforms running from London via the main line. It's a busy station with a main road leading to the town centre. In addition, there is a train care depot with locomotive siding and refuelling point, stabling point with working yard lights, working colour lights and ground shunting signals. The layout is DCC operated by the Lens 100 system with a wide selection of DCC sound fitted locomotives and multiple units in the fleet. And as a little plug, Greg from Ebsworth Street was on the Model Rail Replacement podcast the other week, so if you'd like to know more about his modelling history and what he likes about the hobby, then why don't you go and find it and have a listen. That's the Model Rail Replacement podcast on Spotify or anywhere else you like to listen to your podcast. You can even find it on this channel. We catch a glimpse of a classic bubble car in rail track livery making its way towards the platforms, while a Class 170 in Central Trains livery passes in the other direction. There was more 009 gauge modelling with Devonmoor. Presented by the Dartmoor 009 group, this 1950s anything goes layout was formed by a small group of friends who thought it would be fun to have a go at 009 narrow gauge modelling. Their display features a selection of members' modules and linking boards. They were all a bit short of space, but fancied having a large 009 layout to run trains over. They came up with the idea of meeting up in a local village hall and linking all their own small layouts together to make a much bigger layout with different environments, including stations and yards to run trains between. They decided to use modular baseboards, all with the same height legs, electrically linked by the same connectors and controlled using digital command control. The main modules have their own legs and are connected together using linking boards that span the gap between, fitted with the same common electrical connectors. Members are free to model whatever they like. There are no restrictions placed on what each person chooses to build on their individual boards, just that they should be able to connect them to the network. Most importantly, however, each member's layout is usually able to operate as a small self-contained layout at home, should they so wish. So unlike a normal exhibition layout, you will not see continuity in the scenery or have an idea of what can be achieved.
Okay. The advertising in our the magazine.
Do you want one of each, or you want to do that one? Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah. Oh, of course it is. Yeah, no, that's you. Of course it is.
And it's our last layout of the video. Charwelton into the 80s. This 00 gauge 1980s layout is set in the Midland region on the former Great Central. Its operating team is the CBM Diesel Group. The layout is based on the real location of Charwelton on the former Great Central Railway. The GCR closed in the 1960s, and the layout seen here is their vision if the line had still been open in the 1980s. It is built to 00 gauge fine scale, 4mm to the foot. The layout was originally built to be operated using DC and has been converted to DCC. They've been refurbishing the layout to bring the infrastructure and scenery into the era of BR in the 1980s. The locomotives and rolling stock used have been detailed, renumbered in some cases, weathered and fitted with DCC sound. The stock is run in prototypical formations that are known to have operated the line before its closure in the 60s, replaced with period correct stock for the 80s, along with some formations that they have seen in photographs that took their fancy and felt were worth modelling.
Go and set the road in. Locomotive license that being used.
I hope you've enjoyed this video of the Great Electric Train Show, and if you have, then please click the like button. If you'd like to see more videos like this, then click the subscribe button. And if you feel like it, leave a comment below. Anything like that helps the channel grow and other people find it, so it's mostly appreciated. That's all for now. Hopefully, I'll see you again next time.
They are slowly going blue and grey.
You've stuck around to the end. Good for you. Tell you what, why don't you treat yourself to another video or a podcast? There's plenty to choose from.